let's talk more about how the 2020 candidates and the economic plans that they're proposing would impact the deficit and the debt. Joining us is Phil Klein, a Washington Examiner executive editor. Is the author of the new book, Fear Your Future, How the Deck is Stacked Against Millennials, and Why Socialism Would Even Make It Worse. And then Jared Bernstein is former chief economist to Vice President Biden. He's now a senior fellow with the Center on Budget and Policy Priorities and a CNBC contributor. We've disclosed that you're close with Vice President Biden, Jared. So if I ask you about Elizabeth Warren and some of her plans, are you going to be pushing your friend's candidacy, or can we get an honest answer out of you? What do you think of Elizabeth Warren's, for example, the Medicare proposal?
I think every answer to every question you've ever asked me has been honest. Let me just put that on the record. I think she's an exciting candidate. She's certainly taking a very different theory of the case than the vice president. His theory of the case is that there is a large untapped segment of the Democratic electorate, including the primary electorate, that wants to kind of go back to the way things were and take a more moderate path, while hers is, obviously plotting new ground to far left of center. And so what's interesting is that the polling data suggests that there are significant camps in support of both of those concepts. So I think we got a couple of good and different candidates there.
You're so tactful. I mean, I kind of heard a slam there, I think. Phil, what are your comments on either what Jared just said or on whether the Warren presidency could really, get some traction with some of these plans, which I don't know, dude. I'm sitting on a different side than a lot of this on these issues. But is it possible we could start pursuing some of these initiatives?
I mean, I'm very doubtful in terms of the politics of it, but it's just amazing to me what Elizabeth Warren, a leading presidential candidate, is proposing. It's a complete joke, and I don't think that she's adequately being called out on it. The plan that she is putting out to so-called pay for her proposal, she claims it's going to cost $20 trillion. The Urban Institute, which is a liberal think tank, claims that it would cost $34 trillion. So there's a magic $14 trillion from out of nowhere. She also relies heavily on all of these magic administrative savings from instituting such a plan. But even if you acknowledge there are some administrative savings, what the Urban Institute also found is that logically there would be a massive increase in consumption if you're giving everyone free health care with no deductibles or no co-payments or, no charges on them at any time, which even Canada doesn't do. Canada has co-payments and so forth. Right. And so on top of that, she's creating wildly magic revenue raisers. She claims that she's going to raise $2.9 trillion from fighting IRS fraud. Nobody with a straight face believes that that's going to happen.
Jared, how do you react to that? All of the comments that Phil just made?
Well, first of all, I really think it's kind of not very useful or insightful to have Washington pundits decide what's politically palatable. I actually agree with some of the criticisms, and I'll get to them. But, the 20,000 cheering people that she's drawing to crowds are not sitting there thinking, gee, wait a second, I don't think, the Appendix 2 lines up with proper accounting methods. So she's clearly an inspiring candidate to a chunk of the electorate. Now, whether that chunk of the electorate is as large as she thinks it is, going back to my first comment, we'll see. Now, on her plan itself, I also think Phil mischaracterizes it. First of all, just quick fact check. Once you factor in some of the savings, the Urban Institute actually says $32 trillion, not 34. But that's,
Jared,
a distinction without much of a difference.
Jared, what is your honest opinion of the plan? And broadly, because I think that you have a lot of misgivings about it, and you're being very generous, and I appreciate what you're trying to do here. But so just tell us what you actually think.
So my biggest misgiving about the plan is that it is really hard to transition 160 million people from employer-provided coverage, many of them, I'm one of them, really like that coverage without a much longer transition plan than I see in here. In terms of making the numbers add up, yeah, there are definitely some questions there. But in fact, I think she's done a pretty good job of focusing the debate on those very questions. What I don't see is a transition plan for people who like their current coverage. And I was in the Obama administration. Wait, I was in the Obama administration. Let me just finish one point. I was in the Obama administration when we worked on the Affordable Care Act. It was very important for us to talk about the extent to which people would be able to hold on to their own plans. Now,
if you like your plan, you can keep it. That's not the case.
Which turned out to be.
We were going to talk about this plan in context of the deficit. And my question is, do we have a double standard? Do we evaluate social programs based upon their impact on the deficit and not do so when it comes to corporate and other individual tax cuts? And I would throw that question to Phil and to Jared. Is there a double standard when it comes to the importance of the deficit on social programs versus when it comes to, because we did have, Phil, right, an unfunded corporate tax cut, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think that, and I argued that should have been offset with spending cuts.
I was all in favor of the tax cut.
However, let's not, mix up order of magnitude here. Right. There's a big difference between 1.5 trillion and 32 trillion in order of magnitude. One is something that we've seen before.
But that's not a $30 trillion increase in the deficit, right? It's an increase in federal spending.
Yeah,
and if you take $100, let me just finish this, Phil. Take $100 that you paid in your insurance premium to your employer and instead give that as a payment to the government for medical care, all things being equal, you should be indifferent to that, right?
No, but the issue is that even if you account and take that framework, the Urban Institute says national health spending would increase by $7 trillion over what it otherwise would have. And it looked at administrative costs, and it looked at savings from cutting doctors' payments and hospital payments, and it said even if you account for that, it would increase $7 trillion, because if you give people a blank check, free health care, no premiums, no co-payments, no deductibles, no skin in the game at all, it's going to massively increase health care consumption. And there's a reason why other systems, which people like Elizabeth Warren always like to say, well, look at other countries. In other countries, there are cost sharing. There is not this limitless blank check.
I think the plan's crazy, but I just don't want to evaluate it on the same scale as a social program.
But let me ask you a question. Why do you think not enough? Most people, if you go on, watch TV, read articles, people are not running around saying it's crazy, even though the math makes no sense. It makes no sense.
The real problem is you take too much spending and you put it into government, and that's not tied to productivity and other efficiencies.
Wait, guys, whether you like it or not, whether you believe it or not, Elizabeth Warren is not waving her hands. She's saying here is a set of pay-fors. Now, we can have a great, robust argument whether those pay-fors actually get the job done, but she is not saying, I'm going to put this on the deficit. Now, a good question for her...
Are you taking the side that this would work, Jared, if we're going to have that debate?
No, I'm not. And that's why I was about to say, a good question for her is, given that neither this nor the next Congress will enact your plan, don't tell us about what you'd like to do. Tell us about what you will do, what you would do, what you think is in the realm of the possible. That's the debate we should be having, because this debate, this is basically saying, I'm going to buy a unicorn and I'm going to pay for it with a unicorn. And I get that it's an important aspirational debate, but in terms of actually getting down to what we're going to do about our healthcare system, that's the debate we need to have.
Financial illiteracy epidemic in America, and it's right here.
Thank you.